You've just been ripped apart by a grizzly bear, and the men responsible for saving you are about to bury you alive. Now, the only thing keeping your body moving is revenge. What makes this terrifying is that it's based on a real story, and if we were here, we need to use the tribes, terrain, and every brutal mistake against them. We're going to follow the story one danger at a time, then pause at each trap and use real history to find the best way out. Because before the bear, this guy is already one bad decision from dying. Glass here is collecting pelts with his son when he suddenly hears gunshots in the distance. The Arikara have found them, and now the men are being slaughtered. The only way to survive is to abandon everything and head for the boat. By the time they escape, they've lost 33 men, and nearly all the pelts are gone. They're stranded in the wilderness, the natives are hunting them down, and nobody knows why. The next day, they return to land. He walks ahead to look for food, but that's when he hears something in the distance. Aiming his gun, he follows the sound and discovers a bear cub. Suddenly, behind him, the mother bear attacks, and he's thrown into the ground. The beast rips him to shreds, biting his back until he can barely move. It's absolutely brutal, but the bear leaves to check on her cubs. The man knows this is his only chance, and he crawls his way over to the rifle. When the bear returns, Glass shoots it in the face, but that doesn't stop a grizzly. It only buys him a second. The grizzly claws his throat open, and now there's only one thing left he can do. Taking out his knife, he waits for the bear to attack again and stabs it until it falls down the hill and lands straight on top of him. The creature is dead, but when the others find him, the man is somehow still breathing, and now the real survival problem begins, because saving one man might kill everyone else. Okay, shooting a bear in the face has just made us more threatening instead of less. Even Lewis and Clark learned this in 1805 when 6 experienced hunters shot a grizzly multiple times, but it kept charging so violently that they had to run into the river before killing it with the final shot to the head. The scary truth is a bear can be mortally wounded and still have time to maul you to death before its brain runs out of oxygen and shuts down. To make everything worse, we have a flintlock rifle and have to reload from the muzzle every time, so one shot is not a survival strategy. It's a Hail Mary. Now take a closer look at how this guy is moving. He's quiet, hidden by plant cover, and alone. This is good for hunting, but horrible for bear attacks. It might sound counterintuitive, but experienced traders understood that hunters could increase bear attack risk because their stealthy movements tell bears you're a predator. Glass doesn't get mauled because he's inexperienced. He gets mauled because he's acting like a perfect hunter in the one situation where hunting behavior can get you killed. Now with the bear in front of us, there's still one thing we can do. Right now, we're directly between the mother and her cub, which makes us an instant threat. That's why the smartest move is back away diagonally from both bears and put barriers like trees, boulders, or deadfall between us and the animal. That way it can't charge directly, and the further we get from its cub, the more it understands we aren't a threat. Only if it charges do we aim our rifle and fire that single shot. If it turns broadside, we aim for the lungs. If it's already coming, we aim for the chest and shoulder. That's a much better strategy than firing too early at its face. Survival is not about being brave enough to fight the threat. It's about refusing to meet the threat where it has the advantage. And that's exactly how these men should be dealing with the Arikara hunting them down. The Arikara weren't just warriors. They were a major native trading power, and their society was built on Missouri River trade. In real history, the Americans and Arikara had a friendly trading relationship until Captain Ashley promised to supply them with goods from St. Louis in the spring. When no traders arrived the next year, the Arikara were pissed. From their perspective, this wasn't random violence. This was a powerful tribe watching Americans break promises, bypass their middleman economy, and move armed men through their territory. This is exactly why they were attacked, and the fur traders knew it. Now all this history matters because right now we can use it to stay alive. As a trading society, the first thing they're going to do is convert those pelts into what they need most: guns, powder, horses, and allies. And their biggest trading partners were French fur traders. That means we can predict where they're going next. That's why if it were me, I would go to the French first, trade our remaining pelts for horses, guns, and powder, and make sure there's nothing useful left when the Arikara arrive. We don't need the French to choose our side. We just need to empty the shelves before our enemies get there. They're the last bargaining chip we have to stop the Arikara from turning stolen fur into horses, guns, and another massacre. Fitzgerald here already knows what he wants to do. Glass is dead weight, and if they keep carrying him, everyone else might die too. They rest for the night, hoping to drag him over the mountains in the morning, but this is where the problem problem becomes impossible. Glass can't walk, his fever is getting worse, and every hour they spend saving him gives the Arikara more time to find them. Meanwhile, we finally learn why the natives are hunting them down. The Arikara approach a French camp and offer the stolen pelts in exchange for horses and guns. This guy realizes the pelts came from the fur camp they attacked and says they'll only get half price. But the Arikara leader here doesn't care about the money. Two white men snuck into his village and took his daughter, and he'll trade everything he has to get her back. After several days, the men are freezing and exhausted. The mountain is too steep to carry Glass any further. Out of desperation, they decide to end his suffering. The captain raises his gun, but Hawk here starts begging them to let his father live. He can't bring himself to pull the trigger, so he offers $100 to anyone willing to stay behind and care for Glass until he dies naturally. For $300, Fitzgerald finally agrees to stay, but this isn't mercy. It's the moment Glass gets abandoned. That night, Hawk refuses to leave his father's side, but by morning, Fitzgerald is already digging his grave. Taking a break, he leans over Glass and tells him if he wants help ending it, all he has to do is blink. Glass understands exactly what he means and fights to keep his eyes open, but he can't hold them any longer. Taking the signal, Fitzgerald shoves a rag into his mouth and starts suffocating him. At the last second, Hawk knocks him away and screams for help. Fitzgerald has been caught, and if the others hear him, he's finished. He tells the boy to be quiet, but Hawk won't stop. Panicking, Fitzgerald grabs his knife and stabs him right in front of his father. The boy is dying inches away from him, and Glass can't move, can't speak, and can't do anything but watch. Okay, this is obviously a horrible situation to be in, but Fitzgerald here is absolutely right. If the Arikara come, they'll attack everyone, and if the captain wants to risk their lives for one man, then he shouldn't be captain. $300 in 1823 was worth roughly $9,000 in today's buying power, so the captain didn't solve the problem, he just put a bounty on Glass's death. The most dangerous situation for us is to have the entire group agree that Glass should die. That's too many people to fight off, but two people is entirely possible. It's also important to point out this thing on Fitzgerald's head. That's a scar from being scalped by an Indian. Scalping was such a real threat on the frontier, it became a propaganda weapon their culture used to justify taking their land. They thought if these people were cruel and savage, then invading them was the right thing to do. Having this scar probably means he's already heavily biased against native tribes. This is a big problem if he sees the opportunity to get revenge on another native. All of this tells us Fitzgerald has every reason to kill us, and once the group leaves, nobody can stop him. That's why if it were me, I would wait for the group to leave until it's just the four of us, and then tell Jim here that Fitzgerald wants to kill us for the money. Then we find a moment where we can get Fitzgerald alone and kill him when he's not expecting it, telling Jim it was self-defense. What's great about this is that whether Glass lives or dies, we can return and claim his $300. Fitzgerald's selfish behavior made this whole situation a lot more beneficial, and all we have to do is exactly what he planned on doing to us. The great thing is that in 1823, even though the frontier was under US jurisdiction, these people were so far from law enforcement that they often couldn't do anything, especially if it's your word against mine. As long as Jim doesn't see anything and backs up our story, we can add a massive payday to this situation, no matter how it turns out. Now, killing Fitzgerald only removes the immediate threat, but it doesn't solve the wilderness, and this is where the real challenge comes in. The smartest thing we can do here is find concealed terrain near water and build a small camp around Glass. Being near the river gives us drinking water and lets us hide our tracks in the current. That way, the Arikara are more likely to track the main group instead of us. If we need food, the safer method is to forage plants and trap for meat instead of hunting with our rifle. It's the best way to hide our presence and keep Glass alive. Once Hawk catches Fitzgerald suffocating his father, there is no peaceful version of what happens next. If Hawk lets him recover, Fitzgerald can kill the witnesses, finish Glass, take the money, and walk away clean. That's why hitting him once and screaming for help is not enough. We have to kill him, because the second Fitzgerald realizes he's been caught, this thing becomes a crime scene, and the only one willing to act first gets to control the narrative. Later that night, Jim here returns with beavers for food, and Fitzgerald pretends nothing happened. The kid asks where Hawk is, but the man says he has no idea. As long as Glass is still alive, the truth will come out. The next morning, Fitzgerald wakes Jim in a panic. He says the Arikara are nearby, and if they don't leave now, they're both dead. Jim insists they gave their word to stay with Glass, but Fitzgerald has already made his wise decision. He drags Glass into the grave and starts throwing dirt over his body. The kid is horrified, but now he has to choose between his promise and his life. Apologizing, Jim gives Glass his canteen and runs into the forest. Fitzgerald has buried this man alive, but Glass here refuses to die. Hours later, he claws his way out of the dirt with whatever strength he has left and crawls towards his son. Hawk is dead, and now survival is no longer enough. The only thing keeping Glass alive is revenge. After saying goodbye to his son, Glass tries to find food, but all he can scavenge are the bones of a dead animal. It's dangerous, but there are no better options. He scrapes old meat from the joints and drags himself down the river to fill his canteen. He tries to take a sip, but the cut in his throat makes it impossible to drink. Now every basic need is trying to kill him. That's when he makes a brutal decision. He starts a fire, pours gunpowder into the wound, and lights it, but the spark cauterizes the cut just enough to keep him moving. The plan works, but he's not safe for long. Back at the gravesite, the Arikara have arrived. They're on his trail now, and they're looking to kill anyone connected to the men who took their girl. That night, Glass builds a fire and collapses by the river, but when morning comes, his nightmare gets worse. Across the shoreline, he sees the Arikara closing in. He can barely walk, and if they find him, he's dead. Thinking quickly, he backs into the water and hides against the cliff wall, but they spot him almost immediately. Arrows start flying, and Glass lets the current take him. Now he's escaped the warriors, but the river might kill him instead. Ahead of him is a chain of waterfalls, and Glass has no idea if he's about to survive the fall or be smashed to pieces on the rocks below. Okay, this is terrifying, but the real problem is that we shouldn't even be here. If the man knew his history, he would have found a much better opportunity for survival, starting with this carcass. Picking meat from these bones is a major dehydration risk. It has almost no caloric benefit and could make us puke out water we can't afford to lose. That's why if it were me, I would crack them open to eat the marrow, because it's fat-rich and protected better than rotten meat. Now, having said that, we actually shouldn't be looking at this dead animal like it's a food source, because the best use for it is to build a brand new tool set. Earlier, Fitzgerald took our gun, knife, and tomahawk. So not only are we facing hunger, we also don't have tools to find food in the first place. Right now, we can't cut plants, sharpen wood, dig roots, or build anything that helps us stay alive. The great news here is that historically, these people used every part of an animal for survival, and Glass would have known this. Even Lewis and Clark recorded native uses of bladders as water buckets, intestines as pouches, and hides as rope in the wilderness. That's why this carcass isn't just calories for dinner. We can turn this into the knife Fitzgerald stole from us to get those calories. That's why if it were me, I would break down the carcass for survival tools and follow the river. We're too weak to survive by searching for food randomly, so instead, we need to find the system that creates food, and that brings us to beavers. What's amazing is that these animals literally engineer the ecosystem to support wildlife. It slows the current, floods the low ground, and creates the exact kind of wetland we need to find easier food in the first place. In fact, Plains tribes treated the beaver as one of their most important spirit animals, and their stories even describe them teaching humans how to survive winter, use roots and herbs, and live in the wilderness. For a fur trader trying not to die, that's the closest thing nature gives you to a survival map. All this means a beaver dam isn't just an animal sign. It tells us food, water, shelter material, and edible plants are all concentrated right here. The water covers our tracks, the dam leads us to food, and that's where we're gonna find cattails. These things were known as Indian corn because the natives actually used it as a normal food source. They grow in low-lying water, and they're one of the best survival plants because the lower stems and rhizomes are edible, high in starch, and the pollen can be used like flour. That matters because Glass here needs carbohydrates he can actually digest without chasing anything or crawling deeper into bare country. Now here's why that carcass toolkit is so important. The cattail roots we need are buried in mud, and winter makes that ground much harder to dig. Someone this weak doesn't stand a chance digging for plants with his hands, but with bone tools, we can reach food we couldn't otherwise access. And if we can find dry cattail fluff, it works as flash tinder for a quick fire. Without it, starting a fire after a bear attack would be insanely difficult. And cattails give us both the easiest fire starting material and the best carbohydrate food we can get without hunting anything. Fitzgerald took everything we had to survive, but if we know how to read the land, the carcass can give us tools, the beaver gives us the map, and the cattails gives us energy to stand up and get our revenge. With some luck, he makes it down the waterfall and rides a log until it drifts onto the shore. But his body temperature is collapsing, and if he doesn't get warm soon, the winter will finish him off. When night falls, he sees a native eating from the remains of a dead bison. It's clear he isn't part of the hunting party, so he approaches, showing that he isn't dangerous. The native shares his meat, and it makes Glass want to vomit, but every calorie is another few steps toward revenge. The next morning, the man asks what happened. Glass explains that a bear attacked him and that his own men murdered his son. He offers a gift in exchange for help, and the man decides to give him a ride, buying Glass time to heal his wounds. Meanwhile, Fitzgerald and Jim finally make it back to the fort, but when the captain asks what happened, he says they buried Glass with honor. Hawk ran away, the Arikara were coming, and they had to leave. The captain pays them for their effort, but Fitzgerald has no idea that Glass is still alive, and if he makes it back, this lie becomes a death sentence. Out in the wilderness, the men push deeper into the cold, but Glass is too weak to keep moving, so the man breaks down some branches and builds a small shelter. It's just enough to break the wind and keep him alive until morning. When Glass wakes up, the storm has passed, but his friend has disappeared. He keeps walking until he finds a body hanging from a tree. It's the man who saved him, but that's when he hears voices in the distance. The French are camping nearby, and Glass sees his chance to steal a horse until he notices something else. These men have captured a native woman as well. The French trader starts to hurt her, and Glass here uses the distraction to sneak up and steal his gun, saving the girl. The camp realizes something is wrong, but before they can react, he fires a shot, jumps on a horse, and escapes, giving the woman her only chance to run. He finds a place to rest for the night, but in the morning, everything changes. The Arikara finds him and starts shooting. Panicking, he runs for his horse and takes off, but they're right behind him. There's nowhere to turn, and before he realizes it, he's charging straight over a cliff. He hits a tree on the way down to break his fall, but the tribesmen think he's dead. Freezing, he guts the dead horse and removes its organs. Then he climbs inside the carcass to keep himself warm, hoping that the natives won't find him again. Glass sleeps there until the coast is clear and starts walking, now closer than ever to reaching the main camp and getting revenge. Okay, the man just pulled off a miracle, but once again, we wouldn't need to be in this situation if Glass had recognized a better strategy at the camp. And it all has to do with the Indian Country Crimes Act of 1817. This native girl changes everything, because suddenly it's not just a normal camp, it's a crime scene. Now, it's important to remember that the frontier was too far from government reach to enforce the law, so they passed the Indian Country Crimes Act, expanding criminal law into Indian territory. That means if anyone committed murder there, it could be punished the same as if it happened on US territory. This was a big deal because if tribes found out about crimes against natives on their own land, one bad decision could start an actual war. That's exactly why the moment you see a dead native hanging from a tree and a captive Arikara woman, you're no longer a fellow fur trader to them. You're a witness to their crimes and a threat to their own survival. Now, as horrible as this sounds, it's actually giving us the perfect opportunity to use their crimes against them and get back to the fort unharmed. If being a witness makes us dangerous to the French, then it also makes us safe from the Arikara, who are hunting us for the same reason, and all we need to do is save this girl. Even if Glass doesn't know that this is why his men were attacked at the river, he would still know that native women in the fur trade were often very important figures to their people. They worked as translators, traders, and cultural middlemen who helped form alliances with the natives. Saving a powerful Arikara leader who would vouch for us could become our diplomatic passport to buy a safe passage through the Missouri River, and that means the safest direction may not be away from the Arikara, but toward them. That's why if it were me, the smartest thing to do here is wait until they're all asleep, but instead of going for their horses first, I'd go for their guns. In 1823, most frontier rifles still needed a tiny chain reaction to fire. First, the flint strikes steel, then sparks hit the powder pan, and the flame passes through a touch hole into the barrel. Break any part of that chain and the gun becomes useless. So before I free the girl, I'd smear mud into the touch holes of every rifle I can reach, then steal any powder horns near the horses. Then, we free the girl and cut loose all the horses to make them scatter, except for 2 that we'll use for ourselves. When the men wake up and see their captive gone, they'll grab their guns and fire, but all they'll get is a flash in the pan. Then they'll have to chase down their horses while we're escaping, and the men won't have a chance at catching up. What's even better is that if the Arikara find us now, we won't look like a white trapper fleeing on stolen property. If the plan goes right, they'll see her first, alive and free, and pointing at the man who helped her escape. It's the perfect strategy, and once she vouches for us, we have the first real chance of making it back to the fort without being killed on sight. Later, one of the French arrives at the trader's camp asking for help, and they bring him in, but the man has shocking news. He tells them they were attacked, showing them a flask of the man who did it. Jim here instantly recognizes it, and now Fitzgerald knows he's in trouble. The captain thinks Hawk might be alive and takes a party out to find the boy, offering $10 a man, but they have no idea he's already dead. They search through the woods at night and suddenly hear a gunshot. That's when Glass here walks out from the trees, and all of the men can't believe their eyes. They ask him what happened, but he can barely talk, so they prepare to take him back to camp. The next morning, the captain rides ahead and he's already looking for Fitzgerald. The man lied to his face, but when he searches his cabin, he's already gone. When Glass arrives, they take him inside to treat his wounds, and the captain asks him what happened. He says Fitzgerald killed his son, and all he needs is a horse and a gun to find him. The captain knows he's too weak, but this man is the only one who can track him down, and he deserves his revenge. Agreeing, they wait until morning to ride into the wilderness where they find Fitzgerald's tracks, and he's only half a day ahead of them. After a day and night of travel, Glass notices smoke in the distance, and they split up to find more tracks, agreeing to meet back here if it's an Indian campsite. The man gets off his horse and travels deeper into the woods, but doesn't realize that the captain has already found their man. Holding him at gunpoint, he threatens him to leave, but the men shoot and Glass hears the shot echo. He rides back to look for them, only to find the captain dead with his head scalped. Fitzgerald is trying to cover his tracks, but Glass here is too smart to fall for his tricks. He takes the captain's body and continues his search, but that's when he gets an idea. He realizes Fitzgerald is out there waiting to shoot him, so he cuts a branch to set up his plan. Okay, Glass here is tracking this guy like a normal fugitive escaping through the woods. But if we know our history, what we should really be tracking aren't his footprints, it's his destination. This guy has no future with the trapping company. The woods can only hide him for so long, and he knows Glass is an expert tracker. That means what Fitzgerald really needs is protection and a new identity. And out here, the best way to get both is to put on a uniform. Fitzgerald's smartest move is not running deeper into the wilderness. It's reaching the army before Glass reaches him. Once Fitzgerald becomes a soldier, he's no longer just a fugitive Glass wants to kill. He's part of the government itself, and it makes revenge impossible. Now, Fitzgerald is only half a day away, and he knows someone is coming. That means when he started this fire here, he knew we would find it, and that makes it a trap. That's why if it were me, we would stay together, circle the perimeter of the area instead of heading straight toward it, and move like the man is already aiming at us. Instead, these guys split up, and now the captain is dead. Under these circumstances, the best decision right now is to become unpredictable. And that means instead of looking for Fitzgerald, we should be looking for his horse. We already know he has one because we saw his tracks earlier, and if he's hiding in ambush, then he wouldn't keep a horse nearby, giving away his position. The logical conclusion is that he's tied it somewhere in the trees for cover and will return to it when he's ready to escape. That's why if it were me, I would find Fitzgerald's horse and kill it. This horse is his freedom. So when he hears the shot, it's more likely he's going to check on his horse because without it, he loses his only fast way out. When he comes back, he'll be close enough for us to kill from cover, and this gives us the advantage of the first shot. This is exactly what he was trying to do to us, and that's why it's the best move. Not only that, but in the 1820s, they mostly used flintlock guns that they had to reload from the muzzle after every single shot, and historical records tell us it could take a full minute before you're ready to fire another bullet. If making or missing that first shot could be the difference between life and death, then we need to make sure we have the best shot possible, and drawing him in to check on his only escape strategy is the smartest way to do it. Moments later, he's riding across a field when they're shot at, and Fitzgerald comes down to make sure he's dead, but discovers that the rider was the captain propped up by a branch. Suddenly, Glass pulls a gun from the back and shoots, chasing his man back through the woods. They fall down a slope, injuring both of them until they're too tired to run, and now the man is cornered into a face-off. Turning around, Fitzgerald tries to excuse what he did, but Glass doesn't care, and now it's time for payback. He charges forward to tackle him and manages to cut off the man's fingers, but he won't go down. It's a brutal fight, but Glass here finally makes the killing blow, stabbing him in the gut. Fitzgerald tries to crawl away, but Glass wants to make sure he watches him die, just like he was forced to watch his son. Suddenly, the Arikara approach, and Glass sends Fitzgerald down the river for them to scalp. They wanted their own revenge, and now they have it. When the group approaches, he sees the girl he saved and realizes the only reason he isn't dead right now is because she vouched for him, and it taught the man a valuable lesson. Sometimes a bear attack is the only way to win an Oscar.
But what would you do? Tell me in the comments how you would survive it. If you enjoyed this content, please like and subscribe. It would really help the channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.